哇，别人裁员都是直接裁，阿里巴巴裁员是每年向中国输送1000个人。
Jack Ma, one of China's most famous billionaires, just called getting laid off a gift. He meant it kindly. To him, Alibaba was taking its experienced people and giving them back to society as a contribution, not a betrayal. However, in much of China today, that line has become a curse. After you turn 35, you can be gifted away at any time. Layoffs even have a nickname. People don't say you were fired, they say you graduated. Zhang Ming is 38. He spent 12 years at the same internet company, and one 4-minute meeting ended all of it. He graduated. He saw it coming, the way every middle-aged programmer does. In China, there is always someone younger and cheaper willing to work longer hours for less. For Zhang Ming, losing a job means losing much more than a paycheck. 3 things were resting on it: the mortgage, his daughter's education, and his father's medical bills. Now, they have nothing holding them up. Hi everyone, I'm Ben Chen. Hope you're doing well. On this channel, we will dig into what's really going on behind the China stories you keep hearing from the inside. Today, no big macro headlines. We're going inside one ordinary Chinese family, because that's where you actually feel what it's like to live in a country changing this fast. China's middle-class problem isn't the one you usually hear about on the news.
Right now, the Chinese economy is collapsing,
which people have been saying for 10 years. But it's also not the opposite story, the cheerful one, where everything in China is so cheap that life there is easy. The truth sits between those two, and almost nobody is talking about it. The real problem is quieter and more worrying. The economy is still growing, but the people inside it are increasingly afraid to spend. Why? We'll get there, step by step. Let's start with one set of numbers. These 2 lines matter here. The first is GDP, up 5% in 2024, and about 5.2% in 2025, still climbing. The second is Consumer Confidence Index, where 100 is the dividing line, and above it, people are optimistic and spend. Below it, people hold to cash. That line has stayed below 100 for nearly 4 years. On paper, the country keeps getting richer, while the people in it feels emptier each year. It's like a company reporting record profits while every employee quietly updates a resume. That's China right now. The most useful comparison here isn't the United States, because China today closely resembles Japan in the 1990s. Japan was pulled off a famous economic miracle by the 1980s. It was the second largest economy on earth, with Sony and Toyota everywhere. Then, the bubble burst. People call it the lost decade. Though it lasted almost 30 years, then prices crashed, deflation set in, and spending stayed frozen. Right up to today, China looks like it's on the same path. Then prices are falling, people aren't spending, and the mood feels similar. But in many ways, China's middle class is in more danger than Japan's ever was. Japan's housing actually fell harder. Residential land dropped to 53% nationwide and 66% in the 6 big cities, while China's is down only 15 to 20%. But what matters is less how far you fall than what you're carrying when you do. When Japanese households fell, 3 things caught them. Their jobs were secure, companies rarely cut people, and in 1990, 8 in 10 Japanese had a stable, regular work, open for life among core staff. Their health insurance ran deep, so in a serious illness, a monthly cap applied, and anything above it was covered. And their pension replaced about 60% of their old pay, so retirees didn't have to lean on their children. China has the same 3 supports, but each one is weaker. The secure job is gone, replaced by the wave of layoffs at 35. Insurance is white but shallow. 95% of people have it. Yet a major illness can still cost them more than half the bill with no cap. And the pension that once funded retirements now replaces about 40% of the final salary for the average corporate retiree. So retirement cuts your income by more than half. These are 2 very different falls. Japan's middle class had those supports and sank slowly over about 15 years. China's carries extra weight instead, so the same step off the ledge drops it straight to the bottom in one fall. Faced with that, people do the obvious thing. They save as much as they can. In the third quarter of 2025, a central bank survey found 62% people wanted to save more, and only 90% wanted to spend more. Savers outnumbering spenders 3-1. By the end of 2025, household deposits have climbed to a record of 167 trillion yuan, up almost 10% in a single year. Economists call this precautionary saving. It's the fastest growing wave of saving in China's modern history, driven not by rising wealth, but by fear. Take Zhang Ming's numbers. After 12 years as a programmer in Beijing, he and his wife Li Ting, who does admin at a tutoring company, bring home about 32,500 yuan a month, roughly $4,800. That works out to 390,000 yuan a year. By China's official definition, that's comfortable middle class, even upper middle. However, Zhang felt much richer 12 years ago, when he only earned 5,000 yuan a month. Back then, there was a mortgage, no tutoring bill for his daughter, and no medical chart to watch on his father. Now, the single income covering all of it is exactly what he's about to lose. In China, home is your entry ticket to the middle class. That's true in lots of countries, of course. The difference here is what that ticket costs. But before I hit you with the scary number, there's one thing to explain. Why not just rent? In America, renting is normal. In China, buying isn't "I'd like to." It's "I don't dare not to," because a home quietly controls two big parts of your life. The first is marriage. The dating market has an unwritten rule: no house, no wedding. A 2021 survey by Beike, China's largest real estate broker, found that over 70% of women said a man had to own a home before they'd consider marrying him. Owning a place signals that you are a reliable adult. Showed up without one, and you are already losing point with your future mother-in-law. The second is your child's education. Chinese public schools give you a spot based on where you live, but only if you own a home, not if you rent. See, the best schools are almost all public. Families compete fiercely for homes in the good districts. Buying there isn't only about housing. It largely decides which school the child can attend. All of this pushes people to buy. The result is that China's home ownership rate is about 90%, against 65% in America and 47% in Germany, the lowest in the EU. It's not because Chinese people have more money, but because they have less choice since renting isn't a real option. With 1.4 billion people chasing homes they feel they must buy, prices rise. And this isn't the only reason. China is huge, right? So why have prices never been reasonable instead of just building more? Beyond the pressure to buy, another two forces push prices up. The first is land finance. Local governments, the ones running cities and provinces, get a large share of their money from selling land, even today about 80% of their fund revenue. This is abnormal. Why so dependent on land? Well, let's get back to 1994. Before then, the central government in Beijing collected only about 20% of the country's tax revenue. Legal reform flipped that, putting about 55% of it up to the center. Why? The intention was good. Over the years, it helped to fund the stuff you probably seen online. The highways, the high-speed rails, the poverty programs, the overseas investment, the China miracle. But it left the local governments short, with the same bills and far less money, so they turned to selling land. Because the government owns the land and the developers bid for it. With the highest bid win, the price is pushed to the maximum from the start, and passed on to the buyer. Chinese housing wasn't slowly priced out of reach. It was expensive from the beginning. The other force is that, for a long time, housing was almost the only place Chinese families could put their money. The stock market was an alternative. China's Asians have behaved almost opposite to America's. The Shanghai Index hit 6,124 in 2007, and nearly 20 years later, in 2026, sits only just above 4,000. So anyone who bought that at 2007 peak has been underwater for almost 2 decades. Over the same period, America's S&P 500 went from 1,500 to about 7,500, about 5 times higher. Stocks were the only loss. P2P platforms and wealth management products mostly collapsed too. So over decades, housing became the one asset that kept looking safe. As a result, Chinese families hold about half their wealth in property. A 2019 Central Bank survey put it as high as 59%, while stocks and funds together come to only about 10%. This wasn't really a common conspiracy. It's closer to the near inevitable results of stacked incentives, each fixing one problem and creating another one. But for Zhang Ming, the course doesn't matter. The result does. Let's look at this number. That number is the price-to-income ratio, which already accounts for income, so it's a clean comparison. Buy it. A person in Beijing would have to work for 35 years, spending nothing to buy one apartment, against 10 years in New York and 15 in London. Beijing versus New York is about 3.5 times the gap. That isn't a wage gap. Buying a home in China simply isn't the same equation people elsewhere are used to. So how does Zhang's generation manage down payments on 35-year apartment? Here comes the scary part. Through something distinctly Chinese, the 6 wallets, a phrase the economist Fan Gang coined in 2018. The math is the couple plus both sets of parents, 6 people's savings straight into one down payment. It's not a metaphor, but the literal way many people fund a purchase. In a 2024 survey, over 30% of young buyers relied on their parents in some way. Among those born in 1990s, 77% borrowing on average 670,000 yuan, about $100,000 or nearly 40% of the price, and 12.8% emptied all 6 wallets completely. Mortgage is Zhang Ming's largest monthly cost, but wasn't the first to start draining cash. That began the day he started to study school, education, and it doesn't pause just because one parent loses his job. In China, public school tuition for the 9 years of compulsory education is very cheap. The real cost is everything outside school, where a child's education works more like an arm race than an ordinary expense. The reason is the Gaokao, aka China's college entrance examination, the single exam that largely determines which university a student enters and the whole life you'll end up living. With 1.4 billion people competing for limited places at the top schools, the pressure is intense. In 2021, the government tried to stop the race, and the rest become one of the bigger ironies in this story. Take Zhang's family. His 8-year daughter, Zhang Xiaoyu, has a monthly after-school bill of 3,500 yuan for one-on-one English, 2,000 for piano, and 1,800 for math. 700, 300 in total, nearly a quarter of the family's monthly income. They're not unusual. Chinese families spend on average 20 to 30% of their disposable incomes on education, among the highest rates in the world. In July 2021, the State Council introduced the double reduction policy, which refers to reducing the excessive homework burden and easing the burden of off-campus tutoring. The policy sharply reduced the tutoring in compulsory education, and the number of companies fell from 124,000 to 4,176, a 96.6% drop. The stated goal was to put every child back on the same starting line. What actually happened was different. But tutoring didn't disappear, it moved underground. Before the policy, a one-on-one tutor cost about 200 yuan an hour, and afterward, 500 to 800, with a single one-on-one math session in Shanghai reaching 800. The attempt to make education fairer pushed the families who could still afford it toward private off-the-books tutors, while those who couldn't were shut out entirely. The fix became a new problem, and everyone paid for it. This reaches Zhang Ming's own kitchen table. His wife Li Ting does admin at a tutoring company. The industry just lost 96% of itself. She still has a job, but no one can say for how long. From age 8 to 18, at current rates, his daughter's education will cost about 1.4 million yuan, roughly $220,000 before any college tuition. For a family earning 32,500 a month, that equals 47 months of income with nothing spent. Almost 4 years just to take one child from first grade through high school. A mortgage and the tutoring are at least in the budget, and they come with some certainty. The house is still an asset, and you can watch a child's grades improve. But one line in the budget stays blank, the one no one wants to fill in. What happens if someone in the family is seriously ill? How far is China's middle class from poverty? One serious illness. That's it. And the danger isn't only someone in Zhang Ming's immediate family of 3 falling ill. It's their parents' generation falling ill. Well, before the illness itself, there's a prior question. Why is Zhang Ming the one paying his father's medical bills? The answer is, in China, family obligations carry great weight. Chinese parents often spend a lifetime saving on a child's wedding and first home, and in return, supporting them in old age and illness is treated as natural. It's not only a moral expectation, but also a legal one. Article 1067 of the Civil Code requires adult children to support their parents, and failing to do so breaks the law. The contrast with America is sharp, where parents have Medicare and a pension, and the children have almost no legal obligation, and where a few states have filial support laws that are rarely enforced. In China, a parent's hospital bills are legal responsibility, not just a moral one. The pension law isn't enough. The average Chinese corporate retiree receives a little over 3,000 yuan a month. So Zhang Ming's 2 parents together get just over 6,000, which foods, utilities, and avoidable social obligations use up. Medicine, follow-ups, and any hospital stay then fall to their son. And because of the one-child policy, Zhang Ming and Li Jing are each only children, so 2 middle-aged people support 4 elderly parents, and 1 serious illness in any of them becomes a financial emergency rather than a family conversation. China does have health insurance, and the care can be cheap. Over 95% people are covered, which is world-leading for 1.4 billion people. But there's an avoidable trade-off, since covering everyone while keeping out-of-pocket costs low is nearly impossible. China chose universal coverage, and the cost was death. The average patient pays 30 to 35% out-of-pocket, against about 20% across OECD, basically the world's developed economies, about 11% for Americans with private insurance, and nearly 0 under UK's NHS. That 30 to 35% is only an average, pulled down by routine colds and fevers. Illness that usually breaks a family is cancer. A single course of treatment often costs 300,000 to 500,000 yuan, and about half the life-saving drugs, including targeted therapies and immunotherapies, are not in the insurance catalog at all. So they are paid for in full out of pocket. For a serious illness, the real cost can exceed half the total, with no upper limit. Last year, doctors found a nodule on the lung of Zhang Ming's father. They advised against surgery for now, but ordered a CT scan every 3 months. Outpatient care covers 70%, so each scan costs him 200 or 300 yuan. Well, the worry isn't the amount. It's the day the doctor stops saying come back in 3 months, and instead says the nodule has grown and needs surgery. The lung operation starts at 200,000 yuan, about $29,000, and after insurance, the family still owes 60,000 to 80,000 out of pocket, roughly a full year of its savings. And Zhang Ming, he just lost his job. His father's next scan is booked for the next month. So, the education and the surgery, 3 mountains taken one at a time. And a single one of them, Zhang Ming could carry, putting all 3 on the same table, in the same family, and the same month, is where it breaks down. This is the Zhang family's monthly cash flow. On the left, well, he still had a job. After tax income was 32,500 yuan. After the mortgage, tutoring, his parents' medicine, and everyday living costs, about 9,600 was left at the month's end, roughly $1,400. That's middle class for now. On the right, everything is the same. The apartment, the daughter, the parents, the bills, with one difference, no job. The end of month's balance is minus 30,300, nearly $2,000 in the red every month. The three mountains didn't move at all. So the gap between middle class and going to the red comes down to one single paycheck. And once it's gone, it's very hard to recover. So what would you do if you are Zhang Ming? Sell the apartment, even though it's down 20% and it may already be worth less than the loan against it. Put your daughter out of tutoring and let her fall behind? Or tell your father to skip this quarter's CT scan? None of the options is a good one. This is the other side of China's economic miracle. The skyline, the high-speed trains, and the headline GDP numbers rest on a kind of social contract. The state builds the stage, but staying on it and not falling off is left to you. For 30 years, the contract held because growth was fast enough to feel like climbing. As growth slows down, well, the burdens don't. It stops feeling like climbing and starts feeling like holding on. Ming did everything right. He didn't fail, but the contract did. In a world changing this fast and this hard, some people are carried up and others are thrown off. But hope and disappointment tend to travel together. Maybe Zhang Ming's turn for the better is close. I hope it is for people like him everywhere. I'm Bian Zheng. I grew up in China and was educated in the United States and spent 15 years in China's tech industry. Ex-Alibaba, ex-JD.com, and a serial entrepreneur. My aim is to give you an authentic, fairly grounded view of China from the inside. If this video gave you even slightly different way of seeing the country, please subscribe, and I will keep bringing you the deeper story. See you next time.